This is Gemara Basra Daf Chov Ches, and today's share we'd like to once again dedicate it as an incredible zchos Aliyah's neshama for Fega Eita Bas Arya הכהן B'siyata Dishmaya the Koyach HaTorah should bring Fega Eita Bas Arya הכהן higher and higher in Gan Eden Shalmaila and be a Milatz Yosher for her son, her Heilige son, that we have the zchos of learning the daf together, and v'siyata d'shmaya, the entire chabura. Ches and Baruch Hashem, another exciting day in the world of daf as we begin the third perek of Baba Basra, a famous perek in the world of yeshivas, a perek that is learned in incredible eon, and a perek that hopefully we'll be able to touch and get a glimpse of as we try our way knowing Pashit Pshat. So says the Mishnah, Cheskas Habatim. And in truth, the first two words, the title of the Perek, gives over the real subject and feel of the Perek, which is going to be, how do you create a chazaka? How do you create an ownership over property? When it comes to other items, we could have other forms of kinyanim. But what do we do when it comes to properties? So says the Mishnah, Cheskes Habatim, a chazak on a house, on a pit, on a ditch, on a vault, literally, all different types of cavities in the ground that collect water, the areas with birds live, dovecotes, bathhouses, ubeis abadim, olive presses, ubeis ashlachim, irrigated fields, v'ha'avadim, and servants, and and any entity, any property that produces peiros constantly. How do you create the chazaka? How do you create the ownership onto this entity? 3 days, 3 years, from day to day. That's category A in the Mishnah. Continues the Mishnah. Sdei Habal. What about a field? That Sdei Habal is a field that is watered by rainwater. But not from day to day. Rabbi Yishmael Omer Gimel Chadashim Barishaina, says Rabbi Yishmael, 3 months in the first year, Gimel Ba'achraina, 3 months in the last year, and 12 months in the middle. Hare, for a total, says Rabbi Yishmael, Yud Ches Chaydesh, 18 months, and that gives you the quote-unquote 3 years. The Sdei Habal, a field that is worked by rain, such a field requires a chazaka of 3 years, not day to day, not 3 full years. So how do you get those 3 years? So Yishmael says you got to get 3 months in the beginning, 3 months at the end, the sandwich of the 12 months in the middle, an entirety of 18 months spanning 3 years. That's your chazaka. Rav Kiva Omer, Chaydesh Barishayna, Chaydesh Ba'achraina, V'yod Beis Chaydesh V'emsa. A month in the beginning, a month at the end, and 12 months in the middle. Hare Yud Dalas Chaydesh, for a total of 14 months, and that's enough to suffice for the 3-year span. Omer Rabbi Yishmael, concluding the Mishnah. Mamed Bar Murim, says Rabbi Yishmael, when did we say that a rain-watered field 18 months is enough? B'tstei lavan, with a grain field. Avul b'tstei ilan, a field of trees. Kanas as tvuasai, if he gathered in his produce. Umasag as Esav, he picked his olives. Kanas as kitza, he gathered in his figs. Hare elu gimel shanim. That on its own is 3 years, meaning 3 harvests. When did I say 18 months? Says Rabbi Yishmael. That's in a grain field. In a grain field, you need to span the 3 years with 3 months at the beginning, 3 months at the end, and 12 in the middle. But if it's a tree field with different crops, says Rabbi Yishmael, once you harvest 3 different crops, that is considered the quote-unquote 3 years, which will create your chazakah. So at the heart of the din of the Mishnah is that, a chazakah is 3 years. And the question just is how to calculate that 3 years. That's really how we can sum up the Mishnah. Chazakah of 3 years. When it comes to the first whole list of the Mishnah, it's 3 full years. A rain field is 3 years, not full, either 18 months, 12 months. And a tree field is 3 crops, says Rabbi Yishmael. But says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yochanan, where does this din originate from? Where does 3 years come from? Amar Rav Yochanan, says Rav Yochanan, Shamati Me'olchei Usha. I heard for those who travels to Usha, She'aymer, they were saying, Minayin lechazakah gimel shanim. Where do we learn out this entire concept? Where do we learn out that a chazakah is 3 years? Says Rabbi Yochanan, the Shema, people in Usha said, we learn it from Mishar Amud, bring us back to our Baba Kama days. Mashar Amud, kim shenavah gimel gichais. Just like a Shar Amud, it gores 3 times. Nafik le mecheskas tam, they come le mecheskas amud. We know that a shar, the first 3 times it gores, it's a tam. You pay chatzi nezek and all its dinim. After 3 times it becomes a muad, and you have to pay nezek shalim, etc. Because it has a chazakah, a pattern, an establishment to gore, to naga, to nigicha. Hachinami by a chazakah kivad achlatz lashani. When you ate it for 3 years of the field, it creates a chazakah on the field, and it's in the possession of the buyer. Asks the Gemara 3 lines of the bottom, 1 second. When it comes to a shar amud, 3 times creates it into amud. But that 3rd negicha, you don't pay nezek shalem. You still pay chazik nezek. The 4th negicha is when you pay in full. So I asked the Gemara, Chanami, why don't we say Achnas Revius? Loi kaima bershu say, until the 4th year, it should not be considered in the possession of the buyer. Answers the Gemara, Hachi Ashta, what are you talking about? Some over there by the shore. Have a mud. After 3 times, this animal is a mud. However, why do you only pay nezek shalem at the 4th negicha? As we turn over to Chav Ches Amid Beis, says the Gemara ve'idach, and the 4th negicha kiloi nagach my l'shalim. Because what are you going to pay if you didn't actually gore the 4th time? Meaning the 4th time is the application of this animal becoming a muad at time number 3. As the Tabrashi spells out kalaymar, meaning you got to read a little deeper. The 4th goring that we need, hainu mishum, is why? Because if you didn't gore, then what are you paying for? Whereas, back into the Gemara on our case, once you ate for 3 years, it's considered to be in your possession. So those in Usha have taught us that what's the makar for shalishanim is gimel negichais, shar tam to shar muad. Over there, you only pay at time number 4. That's a practical, because that's when you gored. But you're the muad at time number 3. Asks the Gemara, 1 second, 3 lines down. Ask the Gemara that when we have a chazaka, a 3-year chazaka, without a taina, it should work. Alama tinan. Why do we learn? Ask the Gemara 4 lines down. If you have a chazaka without a taina, eino chazaka. It's not a chazaka. So Rashi over here, being the ultimate Rebbe that he is, and we have to appreciate Rashi that, because unfortunately in tomorrow's daf, Rashi was nifter, and we're going to see the Rashbam takes over. But says Rashi, we're going to learn in the Mishnah on Daf Memal, 3 lines at the top in Rashi. If he asks, what are you doing in my field? And he says, no one ever said anything to me. If he doesn't say you sold it to me, he says, why are you here? Because no one ever said not. That is not enough. You need to have a taina that you sold it to me. And then, by being there for 3 years, it works. But ask the Gemara, why is that necessary for learning it out from Shartan to Sharmud? Explains the Gemara, time of my damrin until Makidika Hashta. Says the Gemara, Darmina Damakidika Amar. Because maybe it's as he said, Hashta Yulai Tain. Anan Litan Lay. Says the Gemara, again, almost a practical din, that if he doesn't say that he bought the field, well, we should say it for him. So the fact that you need the taina is to create the story. Very good, you live there. Very good, after 3 years you have a chazaka. What does it do for you unless we have a story? So that's the reason why you need to have a taina. Ask the Gemara further, 8 lines down, Maskala Rav Avira, Lameata, Macha, Shalai Befanav, Lotavi Macha. If someone protests, and this is how we're getting through the questions of the Gemara, we're getting to understand how the chazaka works, how one can protest the chazaka. If me living in your field is going to prove that I bought your field, how do you block it if you didn't actually sell me the field? The answer is, you have to make a macha. You have to come in with Eidim, and you have to say, I'm protesting. This guy, is not his field. So says the Gemara, based on what we're saying, if you created such a macha not in front of the person in the field, it should not work. Why? Dumya de shar hamuad. That what? Ma shar hamuad b'fana b'inan. Just like when it comes to a shar hamuad, we require that when Bezdin is told over that this animal gored multiple times, the owner has to be there. He has to know to protect his animal. So too, we should equate it back to us. You should only be able to be meicha in front of the guy making the chazaka. So ask the Gemara, if the whole source for our din is the din of shar hamud, it should have the same din of having to be meicha, of having to be made b'fanav. Says the Gemara, no. Hasam, because over there by Shar Hamuad, v'hoad b'bailov ksiv. Over there's a special directive of the Torah that the eidos has to be b'bailov, in front of the owner. Whereas hacha, in our case of testifying, or being meicha, I should say, that it's not this guy's field, chavra islay, v'chavra de chavra islay. Word travels fast. You have a friend, and your friend has a friend. So if you get up and you say, I'm protesting this guy being in my field, eventually you'll find out. The reason over there by Shar Hamud has to be b'fanav is a special gzeras hakosov. Ask the Gemara further. What about Rameir? The Rameir, the Amar. Richek nigi chaysav chayev kiriv nigi chaysav. Lo kol shekein. Said Rameir in Bamikama, only if the 3 gorings happened on subsequent days. However, if they happened all lumped together, it's not considered 3 different actions. It does not create the animal into being a muad. So similarly, in our case, translating the dinim of shar into the din of chazaka, if the one in the field ate the 3 separate crops in one day, kigoin, teina, like you could do on a fig crop. Why? Because the fig crop doesn't all ripen at once. So you could have 3 separate crops that are ready on the same day. And he goes and he eats from the 3 years, the 3 crops. Says the Gemara, le'avi chazaka. It should be a chazaka. Again, according to Rameir, excuse me, I said it wrong. I apologize. Go back a second. Rameir said, that you're for sure chayiv. Excuse me, I said it wrong. Rameir holds if there's 3 gorings on one day, then for sure the animal's a muad. So says the Gemara, if we translate it to us, if you eat the 3 crops in one day, you should for sure have a chazaka. Explains the Gemara, dumya de shar hamuad. No. Ma shar amuad b'inna. What do we need? De'islay. By shar amuad. De'islay ha'negicha. When this agoring exists, leslay laha'negicha. Each one is its own isolated act. It's true, Rameir allows them to happen on one day, but each is a separate act. When this peira exists, and therefore it can't work by eating all three crops on one day. Says the Gemara, almost interjecting back on what we just said. Wonders the Gemara, Achla tlas peri, betlasa yaimi. What if you eat three crops on 3 days? Kigoin slaf, the keeper bush. Lavi that should work according to Rameir. Answers the Gemara, Hasa Peir Amia Isei. Omigmaru de Kagamar. Says the Gemara, it's not true. Migmaru de Kagamar Azal. The Peri was there all of the days, and therefore it's not comparable. Because when it came to the goring, each was its own isolated act. But if you're going to tell me 3 crops on 3 days, it's true, the Gemar, the completion was on separate days. But each crop was there the day before, and therefore you do not have a good chazakah. Ask the Gemara further. If you eat 3 crops on 30 days, kigoines pasta, that it ripens as a new crop every 30 days. Lavi chazakah. Says what's the case? The kadich v'achal. Cases it sprouts a little bit and he ate it. He sprouts a little bit and he ate it. Hasa mishmat shamit. And therefore, that's not a real eating. If you're just eating the first bit of a spasta as it grows, that's not an eating of a chazakah. An eating of a chazakah is the full peri and its full growth. But just to eat a little bit doesn't work. Says the Gemara, the kisham v'achal. Achal tzlasa peri b'tzlasa yarchi. So says the Gemara, if you eat 3 crops in 3 months, meaning now within 1 month, each month it fully grows. Says the Gemara, Man holchei usha. Who are those holchei usha? Rav Yochanan said he heard from the holchei usha that chazakah is like sharamud. Who are those people that told Rav Yochanan the din? Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael, ochanami. And you're right. According to Rabbi Yishmael, you could indeed create such a chazakah, meaning in less than 3 years. As we learned at the end of the Mishnah, the Tanan Rabbi Yishmael, what did Rabbi Yishmael teach us? Meaning, according to Rabbi Yishmael, the equation, the limit from shar is precise. And you're right. Just like by a shar, you could create a muad in 3 scenarios, even if it's less amount of time, according to Rameir, so too according to Rabbi Yishmael. But ask the Gemara, but what about Ul Rabbanan? Ul Rabbanan Mai, what are we going to say according to the Rabbanan? Amar Rav Yosef, Kroksiv, the Rabbanan learned it from a pasuk, 3 lines to the bottom. Sadais va'kesef yiknu, says the pasuk, they buy fields for money. V'kasav v'sefer, they write it into a sefer v'chatam, and they sign the transaction. Sharei, what do we see from here? Navi oimid beser, umazir lachas esrei. The Navi is standing on the 10th year, and he's warning about the 11th year. And therefore, what do we see? We see that being in the field for those 2 years, the 10th and the 11th year, is not enough for a chazakah. So must be he needs more. What's going to be more? It's going to be a 3rd year. We see 2 years. Must be you're not going to have a chazakah until year number 3. Amrle Abaye, says Abaye, that's the makar according to the Rabbanan? Maybe not. Maybe over there. Maybe the Navi is just telling them in the reign of Sidkiyo, it's a taiva kamashmlan. Maybe just giving them good advice. Meaning maybe really you could create a chazakah shorter. And I'll tell you a proof to this, says Abaye, as we turn over to Chav Tesam and Aleph. Says Abaye, if you don't learn the pasuk of Sadis Va'kesev Yiknu as just being Itza Taiva, we have a different problem. On the top of Chav Tesam and Aleph, Benu Batim Vishavu V'nitu Garnas V'achlu Espiriam. Build houses and settle, plant gardens and eat that which grows. My Kamar, what is going on over there in Yirmiyahu telling them? It must just be el Eita Taiva Kamashlan Achanami, Eita Taiva Kamashlan. So says Abai, you cannot prove on this pasuk, and we conclude with a Raya Teida Dechsev, 4 lines down, Chavtesam and Alva Satam Kli Charash. Charesh Lamani Amdu, Yamim Rabim. We see that the Navi is merely giving them good advice, practically telling them what to do, put it in earthenware vessels, so it'll stay fresh for many days. So what do we see? That cannot be the source of the Chachamim, and that which they learned the 3-year Chazaka. We'll pick it up from Rava. We'll have a new Makar for the Chachamim, B'siyata Dishmaya.